There we go. Okay, that crop's a little bit weird. Well, we'll see. Hello. And how are you doing, and how am I sounding? Just before we get started and I record too much stuff that's going to turn out to be shit because nobody can hear anything. Excellent. Glad to hear it. Okay. See how that crop's looking. Hey, start the day off with a little bit of rapid. I'm feeling so good today that maybe I won't get my ass kicked on stream this time. I have this wonderful tradition of playing beautifully unless I'm on stream. It would be shame to break that. God, I mean, I have to say, I haven't felt this good in a very long time. And it certainly helps that I can see straight and my eyes don't feel like somebody's sticking ballpoint pens into them. Okay. Oh, yeah. It really does. I was feeling absolutely wretched yesterday. But I just woke up today and just felt absolutely just brilliant. Had coffee and went off and made focaccia, which I've never made before, and it came out absolutely brilliantly. Okay. Open up that B file, which I'm in a much better position to take advantage of than Black is. Well, let's see what happens next, actually. Okay, I think we'll castle next unless anything too exciting happens. No. Actually, that seems like suboptimal because in the end the queen takes and with check and the knight hangs. Might as well skip that bit and... My friend Nick in Cardiff got me this book. It's a recipe book called The Pizza Bible. It's written by like the 3-time pizza world champion. It has all sorts of amazing recipes in it. And I've basically been studying from that all year, but that's where the focaccia recipe was, and pretty much all the other like pizza related recipes that I've had dealings with in the past year, and it is just phenomenal. I mean, if ever looking to learn to make pizza related things, that's definitely a book worth having. Nah, that looked like it might be a fork, but it really was not a fork. Tarasut mali itang taras. Maybe fuck up some pawn structure here. Or not. Can't believe I just did that. Anyway, I can turn this around. I mean, at the very least, need to just avoid losing any more material. Ooh, okay, thank you. That allows me to redress the balance a little bit. Oh shit, that was not. But I'm still forking the rook and the knight, so there's still something that can be done here. Oh, well. Oh, ooh, thank you. There, that's better. A blundered piece is a sacrifice that hasn't been without prearranged compensation. And I've still got the bishop pair, motherfucker. Okay. Now if I can find a way to get that light squared bishop to bugger off. Okay, too late for that. I have to wait for another opportunity. They did give me a rook here, so I may actually be given more opportunities than. Thinking I might try to get into PogChamps. There we go. That's one passed pawn down. You familiar with PogChamps at all? Oh, fuck balls. Oh, fuck balls more. Fuck balls the sequel. It is a... Said something that chess.com's been doing. Yeah. I saw that coming belatedly. Sort of popularized the game more. They started this tournament of game streamers. Not necessarily chess streamers. In fact, most of them aren't primarily chess streamers. And I recently heard that it's actually much easier for somebody nobody's heard of to get into it than I would have thought. Okay. Now we got a little bit something going on here. Possibly. Shitballs. I mean, that was going to come at this point. Well, there's always stalemate. I don't think it's necessarily terribly likely since there's no queen on the board. And considering that this person actually hangs material about as much as I have, really, just alternatingly, there's always insufficient material if they just can go on and hang their rook real quick for me. Yeah, it's unlikely, I agree. Okay. Hell. That bishop is preventing me getting across. Hi, ja, also alles heute wirklich bestens. Ich habe mich jetzt von der Hornhautverätzung, ja, total erholt und fühle mich so gut wie schon lange nicht mehr. Yes. Okay. Fuck it. Actually, gonna do that rather than the really obvious checkmating pattern that is, like, screaming off of the board at you. Then maybe I will try to see if I can get insufficient material. Sonchaku. Ah, fuck it, this is boring. And unlikely to be all that successful. Let's see what I've got in the reaction bin here. Let's see. Well, we got the PragerU origin story. I don't even know what the fuck that's gonna turn out to be. Only on very rare occasions have I actually watched this stuff before. Are you proud to be an American? Like, Foch debates Caleb Muppet. Oh, okay, we already did this one. This is the one where Muppet explains that setting up an entire capitalist economy complete with billionaires is just an ingenious way to keep the bureaucracy on side. Okay, let's do it. The personality of Stalin. Okay, pause the Moranbong band. And pause this. That off. Wait, why not the library? Surely the library is more likely to have, like, which Barnes and Noble are you going to that has like a special Stalin section? Maybe it's dedicated to him. Yeah, I mean, and here, look. Oh shit, you can't hear him. Oh, I did not have audio output on. Shit. Okay, thank you for noticing that. I forgot to turn that on, bloody OBS. Okay, now tell me if I am still audible or if I need to make any adjustments now.
Then that gets us to Stalin. Who is Stalin? Right? And Stalin is another case of, like, if you go to the library, you go to not the library really, but if you go to Barnes and Noble, you will find all kinds of books about Stalin that are
Well, see, okay. Can you hear him explaining the really weird ass Barnes and Noble that he's got near him? Maybe they just, I mean, maybe he just, it's an online Barnes and Noble, and they just are showing him recommendations. And so it just seems like Barnes and Noble is the place for all Stalin all the time.
I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It'll be little anecdotes that people said. You'll just get this image of this monstrous, brutal tyrant who ate little babies for dinner and had blood dripping down his throat and had vampire teeth. And, I mean, you'll get this over-the-top caricature. And the sad thing about, if you ever read anything about
No, he's not going to give any examples of so far that are of things he's saying are over the top.
Stalin, okay? I'm not going to get into, what happened when Stalin was the leader of the Bolsheviks. I'm not even going there.
Okay, so what the hell? What part of Stalin's life are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about his brief stint in the mausoleum? Maybe the Doctor's Plot? The Doctor's Plot sounds like something Caleb Maupin would be into.
But it's like Stalin was wildly popular when he was running the Soviet Union, and still to this day.
Yes, I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of easy to be wildly popular when every single person who even slightly rivals you in popularity ends up getting shot. Yes, that would have been a bit weird. Yeah, I mean, Kim Jong-un's wildly popular for a very similar reason. The one guy that actually seemed to be a potential, like a hypothetical leadership challenger, who was popular enough that there was some suspicion he might pull it off. He got shot, and they reported it on national television, which they otherwise practically never do.
He's very, very popular in Russia, number one. And number two, he was very, very effective as a political organizer before the Bolsheviks took power. He was a very, very, very effective political organizer.
Yeah, was he a very, very, very effective political organizer?
So if there was nothing good that he ever did, if he
which nobody says,
was just this caricature of evil, who just sat around and was evil all day long, and how can I kill more people today? If that's who he was, why do people still?
These are the impressions he occasionally talks about how he would do more of if he wanted to be popular.
Love him. Why was he able to get so many people to follow him? Why was he, why was he so effective in organizing and building the Bolshevik Party before the revolution? This was a guy who obviously had a lot going for him. And you know what drives me crazy? You know what drives me absolutely crazy?
I have a feeling we're going to find out.
I'll just say this, is that what I just said about Stalin, that, okay, put aside, we're not going to argue about Holodomor and gulags. I'm not even going to go there. I'm not interested.
You can't even get the name right. It's Holodomor. Holodomor, not Holodomor.
In talking about that. Right now we're talking about personalities, okay? Right? So let's just put aside. I'm not going to engage in the historical debate of I'm not doing that. Right?
Okay, so we're not going to. So how the hell are you going to talk about his personality without getting into the historical debate about what he did? What theory of personality is this?
Right? We can agree that a lot of people were in gulags who didn't belong there. We can agree there were some pretty bad famines that happened because the country was barricaded and because they were struggling to industrialize and collectivization. So I'm not even going to...
I'm actually kind of surprised that he's even willing to acknowledge that maybe some of the people who ended up in the gulags shouldn't have been there.
I'm not even going to have that argument here. Put all of that aside, right? I'm sitting here telling you that Stalin, in order to do what Stalin did, in order to industrialize the USSR, in order to defeat the Nazis, in order to build the Bolshevik Party as effectively as he did,
and in order to set things up so that the Nazis could basically freely invade the country and didn't really have much pushback for long enough that they were able to actually get... I need to be careful about that. I'm actually wearing mascara for a change, which I haven't done in like a year. Yeah, we're going to talk about how effective he was at completely ignoring the intelligence that was available in advance about Barbarossa, including roughly when and where the invasion was going to happen. I mean, if we're going to be talking about how effective he was, I mean, yes, his love of Henry Ford and Taylorism as part of the industrialization, I can see where Caleb would feel a certain kindred spirit there. But
he must have been very charismatic and very skilled. That's something that if you're an honest person, you could be the most extreme anti-communist ever. You can hate everything that Stalin stood for.
Yeah, and note that the idea that you could possibly be the most extreme communist ever and not like Stalin. Like, the only people who could possibly have any objection to Stalin are anti-communists. I mean, never mind that what I mean, you hear occasionally they'll mention polls about how popular Stalin is in Russia now. What they don't mention is that's not mostly amongst communists, that's actually on the far right.
You have to admit, the guy was quite competent on some level.
Well, not as a military leader. Not as a person who listens to its advisors. I mean, he was really, really good at keeping the Politburo whipped into shape. That's true. I mean, though, that it wouldn't be all that hard given that the way he. I mean. Yeah, shooting the entire Politburo can be a fairly effective means of discipline.
And people are happy to say this about Hitler. Did you notice that? If you said that about Hitler, you would be the History Channel. You could.
Yeah, and guess what? A lot of the same people who don't like Stalin either will admit that there was maybe something he was effective at, and not necessarily a good thing.
Be the History Channel and say that about Hitler. We all know that Hitler killed millions of people in gas chambers, that Hitler was a mass murdering, racist, fascist who started a war that killed hundreds of millions of people. Hitler was evil. But if you get there and you say, well, Hitler was a very good speaker and he knew how to, everyone's like, yeah, that's okay. But if you
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. He didn't take out his hot take on Hitler being evil when he was visiting Dugin.
say anything good about Stalin, you say anything good about Mao or Fidel Castro or Kim Il-sung, it's like, oh my God, you're and it's like, even if you hate them.
Okay, we've really kind of strayed from the topic, though. I thought we were going to be talking about his personality.
Even if you don't recognize them ever doing something good, you have to admit that in order for them to accomplish what they accomplished, they must have had some skills. They must have been somewhat charismatic. They must have...
Is anyone claiming that Stalin was a complete, a complete schmendrick? Is anyone claiming that he had absolutely nothing going for him?
Been somewhat effective in their work, but you can't do that. And you can do it with Hitler. For some reason, you can do that with Hitler. There's no, if you say Hitler, oh, well, he was a good speaker.
Plenty of people do that with Stalin. Plenty of people, I mean, you hear Trotskyists who aren't exactly going to be suspected of being fans of Stalin, even if Trotskyism, it often does sound like Stalinism from the opposition. But they'll be like, he did kind of win the war. That was something. So, I mean, what the fuck is he talking about? Who is he talking about who doesn't give Stalin any credit for anything? I mean, I don't give him much credit,
he knew how to give good speeches. He knew how to organize. Everyone's like, yeah, that's fine. That's the History Channel. That's, college history classes. Hitler is, we're going to read every biography and every book. And, but with Stalin, if you get anything other than mass murdering, baby-eating butcher, and same with Mao, anything but evil, satanic, blood-drinking, I mean, it's weird.
It's weird how he doesn't have any examples of this.
Harpal Brar, who I've interviewed before.
Yes, I'm assuming a relative of his favorite turf, Jyoti Brar.
Communist writer in Britain. I interviewed him, and in one of his speeches, I remember he said that when the bourgeoisie talk about communism, they stop sounding historical, and they start sounding hysterical. And it's totally true. And as weird as it is, Hitler is widely hated. The majority of the human race recognizes how horrendous the Holocaust was and how horrendous Hitler's crimes were. So we all know how evil, Hitler was. But for some reason, we're allowed to acknowledge that in order for Hitler to do all the evil things he did, he must have been effective in some ways. But
Okay, and you think the people who say that who point out, you know, all the people Stalin killed and the whole Gulag system and the whole system of terror directed at just completely crushing any seed of communism within what was somehow still called the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. You think that do you think they're not saying that he was effective at that? I've literally never heard anyone suggest that he was completely incapable of doing anything effectively. What the fuck is he on about?
not with communists. You can't acknowledge that with communists. With
Oh, well, but we're talking about Stalin here. I thought, not communists.
communists, oh no, they're pure satanic evil. And if you say anything, oh my God, it's the weirdest thing. It is the weirdest thing. I remember sitting there in school. The way they described communism, it's idiotic, it's stupid, only an idiot would believe in communism. They want to divide up everything actually absolutely equally, and everyone gets paid the same wage. That's retarded. You know, they don't believe in God. You know, communism is pure stupidity, pure idiocy. But fascism, it's like, well, you know, Hitler was a very good speaker, and he made the trains run on time. It's like fascism is an understandable mistake. And communism, you just have to be an idiot. I mean, it's like...
I mean, okay, give him that. I mean, admittedly, he disagrees in that he doesn't think fascism's a mistake. But, I mean, yes, it is true that you do get this sort of, yeah, well, you know, at least Hitler was anti-communist. And that, you get quite a lot of that, in fact. These days it's a little bit more subtle, but that kind of idea is often in there.
U.S. society is really, really slanted to the right. It's really, really slanted to the right. I mean, if you don't think there's a right-wing bias in U.S. society, I'm sorry. I mean, you know, it is utterly ridiculous. You know, fascism and Nazism are, that's an understandable mistake. And
exactly how many people will actually call it an understandable mistake, though? I mean, apart from people who have come to prominence recently in the past few years and that Caleb Maupin has actually been kind of running interference for by accusing people of paranoia for pointing out what dog whistles are, because he's such a common user of dog whistles. But, I mean, what the hell is his point here? This is just such a nothing thing here. I mean, I thought we were going to be talking about the personality of Stalin, and instead we're talking about how he's never heard any apologist for capitalism ever suggest that Stalin had any skills, and I don't even know where the hell he gets that.
You know, and communism is, you have to be an idiot to believe in and it's like, no, you know, and again, there's not intellectual honesty here. I'm not a fascist, but I understand.
I'm sorry, I got nothing.
The appeal of fascism.
Yeah, we know.
I understand the arguments that fascists made.
Yes, we know.
I understand what they believe. I understand the effectiveness that fascists built their organizations with.
God, this guy. Okay, I'm really, really glad that you suggested that we should look at this video, because I would never have seen that fucking clip.
Because I'm honest. I can admit that, look, you know, there was a reason that the fascists were able to take power.
And Dugin is a respected anti-imperialist intellectual.
In order to actually understand things, you have to be honest, right? You have to
yeah, and see, that's actually where Caleb Maupin, I think that's actually fairly true, what he just said there, and it actually explains why he never manages to understand anything that he's arguing against, because he's just not honest. He's completely full of shit.
Decide your bias and understand things. You know, I think fascism is abominable. I hate fascism.
Why didn't you say that when you were in the room with all those fascists and the Eurasian movement, Caleb?
I'm appalled by fascism, but I understand it, right? With communism in the United States, you're not allowed to understand it. Communists are just these stupid people who think that everyone should get paid the exact same wage no matter how hard they work, and human nature, duh. And it's like the way people talk about communism is so, you look at the 20th century. How many millions of people fought and died for communism? How many people, intellectuals, Albert Einstein, John Stein, all these people believed in communism, but they're all just fucking idiots. They're all just not smart enough.
Okay, we're 7 minutes into this and we still haven't started talking about the personality of Stalin, which I thought was what we were going to be. It's called The Personality of Stalin. He added that title after this thing, so I have to believe that at some point we're going to talk about the personality of Stalin in a way that is fits in with his bizarre notion that you can talk about somebody's personality without talking about stuff they did. Ja, er verteidigt den Faschismus. Er geht auf faschistische Kundgebungen und verteidigt den Faschismus. Deswegen ist es ja so witzig, wenn er sagt, ja, also, ich kann den Faschismus ja verstehen. Ja, das wissen wir ja, Caleb. Das wissen wir.
To watch Jordan Peterson videos. Are you kidding me? There's a lack of intellectual honesty. So I just want to throw that out there, right?
Well, you could contribute to improving the lack of intellectual honesty by implementing it.
Try to cancel me all you want, but I'm telling you, with Stalin.
Yeah, because that's what people want to cancel him over. It's his insistence on intellectual honesty and accusing random people on the street of being Malthusians.
Right? Stalin was obviously somebody, like him or hate him, who knew what he was doing, right?
Well, except when it comes to organizing defense against fascist aggression and maybe choosing one's allies, he did do very, very well with that. Yes, there are things he was really good at. That's true. In basically having to do with ensuring that there were no challenges to his leadership within the party by shutting them down often by just fucking force. But I don't think we're going to talk too much about that, although in the video we saw last week, I think it was, he does acknowledge that to some extent.
He was a very, very effective organizer. I'm going to tell you about Stalin and his personality.
Okay.
Stalin, he was not Russian. Did you know that? Everyone...
Yes. Okay, but this is the first fact. We're 8 minutes in, and this is fact 1.
I think Stalin was Russian. He was not Russian. Stalin was from Georgia. And no, I do not mean Georgia in the southern United States.
Yes, that's very droll. Yeah, in fact, actually, I have a whole book of Soviet political jokes, and all the Stalin jokes take the piss out of his accent.
Not from Atlanta. He was not from that state right next to Alabama and right above Florida. No. Stalin was from Central Asia, and Stalin's mother.
Technically, Georgia is not in Central Asia. Georgia is west of the Urals. It is in the Caucasus region. You go a little bit further east, you get to Central Asia. Georgia is in the most amazing linguistic zone in the Northern Hemisphere. The Caucasus, it's just ridiculous amounts of languages. It's like somebody sneezes and a whole new language family just suddenly sprouts up out of the ground. It's actually fascinating. And they also invented wine. Georgian wine is amazing. I highly recommend it if you ever get a chance to drink it.
Has one of the biggest personalities that you can ever read about. Stalin's mother is, and by the way, one of the best biographies I've ever read of Stalin is called Young Stalin. It's by Simon Sebag Montefiore. It's called Young Stalin. And it's, again, Simon Sebag Montefiore is so right-wing and so conservative. He's from the British aristocracy. He went to one of these
that name did kind of suggest that.
British private schools, Eton or whatever. And so because he's so conservative and he's so wealthy and all of that, they let him write a book that's kind of admits Stalin's effectiveness. And, Stalin, he's from a little village in Georgia. I think it's called Gori. A little village called Gori. And his mother, Stalin's mother, has a really strong personality. She's somebody who can do anything, practically.
Okay, so we're talking about his mother's personality. We're going to talk about the personality of fucking everybody but Stalin by the time this thing's over.
If she sets her heart on it. She can make anything happen, right? He's from a very poor family, but Stalin's mother is just this very forceful person who can just get things done. And there are different perceptions about why. One popular story, which again we cannot confirm, is that she had many miscarriages before Stalin was born. So she made a promise to God. She said, if I can have one, if you can let me give birth to a son, I will make him become a priest. That's one version. That's not confirmed. For whatever reason, Stalin, which was not his name, right? Yosef Yugashvili.
No. Josep Jugashvili. Ju, not you. And P, not F. They don't have an F sound in Georgian. It's Josep Vissarionovich Jugashvili.
Right? His mother was determined for him to become a priest. And so, even though he's from this tiny little village, even though, his father's a bootmaker and an alcoholic, Stalin's...
that's an addition. I guess in a way that is kind of a secondary occupation. It does take up a lot of time and energy, but the way he says that, it's like, yeah, it's like he did a dual major or something.
Mother goes around raising money to get Stalin to go to seminary school to become a priest. And so she does it. And that in and of itself, people have talked about how that is like next to impossible at that time. For a little town in Georgia, an impoverished person whose father is a drunken bootmaker, a drunken guy who makes boots, and...
How does this differ from being a drunken bootmaker?
It is like next to impossible for somebody from a little tiny town in Georgia to go to seminary school and become a priest. So Stalin's mother somehow going around and raising the money to get Stalin into seminary school is kind of amazing. It is like, it's huge. And that shows how kind of fanatical his mother was.
Okay, so his mother was effective.
And his mother lived well into the time when he was leading the country. And I know Stalin at one point banned any interviews with his mother because she was spending a lot of time doing interviews for newspapers and in the media. And Stalin was sick of hearing his mother talk on the radio and stuff. And he actually banned her from speaking in the media, which is kind of funny.
Just kind of an asshole thing to do. Though I can kind of understand it, yes. Admittedly, that is like the most relatable thing. But, yeah, no. I mean, even the things that he thinks are kind of funny, it's like he identifies with the asshole thing.
Stalin's mother had this big personality, very religious woman, and she determined that Stalin should become a priest. So she somehow got him to go to seminary school. She got the money together to fund Stalin going to seminary school.
You've said this, I think 10 times now. If I were a little bit better at the subtitles, I would put a counter up. Because he's made this point, it's... Okay, he started talking about telling us how his mother fundraised to send him to seminary school. Cemetery school, that's kind of fitting. We were 7 minutes in, and now we're 11 minutes in, and he has not moved on.
And so... Stalin went to seminary school, right? And at seminary school, Stalin was apparently one of the worst behaved students they had ever had. He was constantly getting into mischief, constantly getting into trouble, constantly breaking the rules. Stalin was apparently a horrendous student at seminary school. He was constantly getting in trouble, constantly breaking the rules.
You just said this.
He was like a juvenile delinquent, at a seminary school. One of the things, and this is fascinating, they had a rule at this seminary school that Stalin was at, that you could only read religious books. You could only read religious books. So Stalin went to the local village, and he got a subscription. You could do that at the bookstore in this village. He got a subscription. So they would send him every single book they got. And he then made money selling those books secretly to all the other boys in the seminary school. He had an underground book smuggling conspiracy.
Ja, warum er Stalin lobt? Also, weil er ein Fascho ist. Obwohl, der ist ja auch irgendwie so feige, dass er das nicht. Der kann das nicht einfach direkt sagen. Ebenso wenig, wie er direkt sagen kann, wie er zum Faschismus steht. Er ändert ja den Ton je nach Publikum. Und das ist ja auch bei Stalin halt genauso. Er ist ja einfach unglaublich feige. Also reitet er hier irgendwie an irgendwelchen Seminargeschichten seiner Mutter rum und statt einfach mal zu sagen, wie er eigentlich zu Stalin steht und so weiter, redet er einfach diesen Stuss von wegen Seminarverfehlungen und so. Und ja, denn der muss das ja irgendwie immer so darstellen, als würde er einfach mal versuchen, irgendwie das mediale Gleichgewicht wiederherzustellen. Ach, keiner, er will Stalin zugutehalten, dass er irgendetwas konnte. Was ja natürlich nicht stimmt. Aber er kann nicht einfach sagen, ja, also das und das finde ich an Stalin gut und das solltet ihr auch an ihm gut finden. Denn das ist einfach viel zu ehrlich. Das ist ihm einfach zu ehrlich. Der spielt immer dieses doppelte Spiel, wo er beim Faschos das eine sagt, wenn er Kommunisten ja irgendwie verarschen will, übers Ohr hauen will, dann erzählt er was anderes und dann in anderen, anderen Zusammenhängen dann wieder was anderes. Also je nachdem, was er für ein Publikum vor sich stehen hat, ändert sich gewaltig seine Haltung zum x-beliebigen Thema. Der ist einfach feige.
He ran a book smuggling ring at the seminary school, right? And they weren't communist books, from what I understand. That's been romanticized later, but they weren't.
Yes, probably in part by Stalin.
Communist books, from what we understand. They were just, stuff like Victor Hugo and, just novels and stuff. But he was getting punished, and he was making money doing it, right? It was kind of his little hustle, as Gerard says. That was Stalin. And he's constantly getting in trouble. Not a very good student. He's getting low grades.
Okay, why the fuck are we talking about his time in seminary anyway? I mean, what's the point of this? Okay, yes, cute story. What the fuck's the point?
He doesn't get very good grades. He's not very focused, but he does learn to read and write. And that puts him ahead of a lot of people in Russian society at that time. In the Russian Empire, the Russian Empire in the 1890s, 1900, that puts you pretty far ahead of a lot of people if you can read and write. So finally, his mother just stops paying the bills. She's like, I worked so hard to send you to priest, to learn to become a priest. Worked so hard to do this, and you're screwing around and you're breaking the rules. Screw you, you know. And his mother stops paying the bills.
Yeah, which at which point he probably wasn't too much of an issue because he already had this fucking book thing going.
So Stalin goes to the nearby village, the village near where, his seminary school is.
Yeah, thank you for explaining the concept of nearby village.
And there he joined the Bolsheviks, and he became an organizer of industrial workers, of factory workers.
Despite having absolutely, I mean, so somebody who has never actually been an industrial factory worker, apparently, I mean, they just sort of put that person into organizing factory workers. That's a great idea.
He becomes a union organizer after he's kicked out of the village. But there's another aspect of this too, which is that Stalin's mother and father were not together. That Stalin's father wanted him to be a bootmaker, like he was, not a priest. And so frequently, throughout Stalin's childhood and teen years, his father would kidnap him. Right? I mean, this is one of the saddest things. So his mother wants him to go to priest school, maybe because she made a promise to God, or maybe not, we don't know. His father, who's an alcoholic, wants him to become a bootmaker.
I mean, being an alcoholic, obviously he wants his son to become a bootmaker. That is one of the known things that alcohol will do. I mean, that's why I don't drink on stream, because otherwise I just start yelling at people telling her to learn to make boots.
And so frequently, Stalin will, go home to visit his family or whatever. And from what we understand, the father would show up and take Stalin away with him and start teaching him to be a bootmaker. And then the mother would go back to, wherever the father was and say, no, Stalin's coming with me, and have him become a priest at seminary school. You want to talk about a confused upbringing, right? Your mother is, moving heaven and earth to get the money together to send you to school, seminary school, to be a priest. Your father, on the other hand, keeps showing up, kidnapping you, and taking you, and basically taking you against your will back to his home somewhere else to try and get you to become a shoe or a bootmaker. Do you imagine how confusing that would be for a young man?
I mean, and this is the point where I have to sort of begrudgingly admit that although I still don't know what the fuck his point is, this is actually kind of interesting. I don't know how much of it is actually true. I mean, with a thing with Caleb Maupin is you really do need at least two sources confirming it in order to really be able to rely on it, because he's just full of shit. But I don't see the... But, I mean, okay, this is kind of interesting. Now that he's managed to stop repeating himself and telling us, like, 5 whole minutes, yes, he was going to a seminary school...
I mean,
redundant.
The parents were not together. They were not living together, right? The parents had split apart. So, and Stalin's mother, and again, you want to talk about the force of Stalin's mother. Stalin's mother, the more you read about Stalin's mother, the more you read that she's this dynamic person, right? I mean, this is not a society where women are encouraged to take on leadership roles or her ex-husband is showing up and taking her son away. And then she's showing up and taking her son back from the ex-husband and sending him back to seminary school.
And I don't know if that would actually be I mean, Georgia is traditionally a very Catholic place. They may not have actually even had divorce at the time.
This is like, again, you want to talk about
look that up, but
an interesting thing. But the thing is that everywhere Stalin goes, and this goes right up to the time of his death, Stalin is very much a man's man, right?
Oh, yes, he was quite misogynistic.
Stalin is very much an organizer. Stalin is very much he is popular everywhere he goes. In seminary school, right? He's running this underground book smuggling club. And, he may not be getting good grades, and he may be the class clown, and he may be always in trouble and all that, but he's popular. All the other kids think he's the coolest guy around. And that's one thing that Stalin kind of has going for him. Wherever he goes, people love him, and, later when he's a revolutionary organizer, he goes to prison. And the other Bolsheviks are in the prison, and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And Stalin makes friends with the other prison inmates. And he's really popular in the jail. And the other prisoners, they think he's really badass and they think he's really cool. And that Stalin has a way of just kind of getting people to like him, right? He's charming and he can
Okay, so basically he's a salesman.
tell jokes and he just knows how to get along with people.
He always
he's
bees
the kind
closing.
of person that people like, right? He's a very charming, charismatic individual. You know, and you know, when he's in the jail, right? You know, a lot of these Bolshevik organizers are intellectuals. They're from a wealthy background. You put them in a jail cell with robbers and criminals and murderers, and they're sitting there, oh my God, this is terrifying. Stalin, somehow, all the other prison inmates like Stalin. This happens over and over again. Later, in Stalin, you know, in his revolutionary years, he's deported, right? This is a thing they used to do to criminals and revolutionaries in Russia, is they deport you to Siberia. Russia, they would deport you to Siberia.
And Stalin did quite a lot of that as well.
So they deport Stalin and Lenin, Bukharin, a lot of these great revolutionary leaders, they deport them to Siberia. So they're in Siberia, right? Little, you know, Siberia. Look at a map. Look how big Siberia is, right? You know, it's a big, vast amount of territory, but not a lot of people there. You know, it's very spread out. And, you know, they talk about how, you know, a lot of these revolutionaries are sitting there, oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, Stalin, he goes to the local village. He makes friends, you know, with some of the local villagers. And he's so popular that they elect him the president of the hunting club.
Okay, I mean, it's very convenient. Okay, why, I think I actually understand what he's doing here, because the idea is he doesn't want to talk about, Stalin, the only bit of Stalin's life that is actually really relevant. I mean, yeah, this stuff is kind of interesting, but if he actually talks about Stalin, Stalin's time running the Soviet Union, he's going to have to actually take positions on things he's very careful to be flexible on, because he just sort of, I mean, he, apart from accusing people of being Malthusians and shit, he really tries to avoid ever being all that explicit about exactly where he stands. I mean, even his fucking watchword, his slogan, we need a government of action to fight for working families. I mean, that's such wishy-washy bullshit. So if you want to talk about Stalin without ever committing clearly to a position, then you basically are stuck with, like, Stalin's adolescence.
Stalin could get along with anybody. Prison, you know, workers, factory workers, seminary school, you know, you send him out to Siberia in the middle of the village, you know. Stalin in the Siberian village, he makes friends with all the local Siberians. They like him so much, they make him the president of the hunting club, right? Stalin, and he likes to drink, right? He likes to drink. He likes to, you know, he's a manly man, kind of, you know. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he had a deformed foot. One of his feet were deformed, if I'm not mistaken. But Stalin knew how to charm people. I mean, that's really who Stalin was. He was a man's man. He was an organizer. He was a popular guy. And a lot of people don't know this, but, right, in Lenin's book, What Is to Be Done, he pitches the idea of an all-Russian socialist newspaper. It's called Iskra, which means spark. Iskra was not widely read. The Iskra newspaper, the Bolsheviks, it was an ideological paper.
Starting a whole tradition of publishing not particularly widely read Leninist newspapers
that were already in the
continues even
Party.
today.
However, there was another newspaper that was very widely read, that everybody read. It was all over the Russian cities. It was called Pravda. It means truth. The truth. It was a newspaper called The Truth, Pravda. After the Russian Revolution, it became the official government newspaper. But before the revolution, Pravda was this daily agitational newspaper that the Bolsheviks distributed throughout St. Petersburg. And it was this daily newspaper, Truth. And Stalin was the editor of Pravda. Not Iskra, not the ideological, theoretical journal. He was the editor of Pravda, of Truth. And a lot of what was in Pravda was what they called worker correspondence, letters to the editor. And it was just people complaining about their conditions. And it was anonymous. A lot of it was anonymous. Anonymous letters from people. Hey, at my factory, they're making us work this long. It's bullshit. I don't like it. Thank you, John. Hey, at my factory, they just got this new machine.
It's bullshit. I don't like it. Thank you, John.
And it doesn't work. And it was just people, average people, often not signing it with their real name because they didn't want to lose their job and they didn't want to get in trouble. It was average people, writing letters, and that was most of what Pravda was. It was worker correspondence. And Stalin was the editor of Pravda, of the daily newspaper that people could read. It was this daily newspaper that agitated. It was the agitational newspaper. Iskra was the ideological paper. It was the propaganda newspaper. But Pravda was the agitational newspaper that just kind of stirred people up to a greater confrontation with the bourgeoisie. And Stalin was the editor of that, along with Kamenev. So, Stalin, the more you look at Stalin, the more you see this is kind of a man's man. This is kind of a
He really likes that
mass
phrase.
organizer. This is a popular guy, a lot of testosterone
Which really...
there,
Wow, he likes to hammer in on the whole testosterone thing. And the thing that just kind of comes to mind, and I somehow don't think, since there are only 3 minutes left in this thing, having spent roughly 15 minutes saying his mother raised money for him to go to seminary school, that we're going to see why it is that maybe a guy who was so good, apparently, at getting people to like him, managed, after running the country for a few decades and dying, didn't even manage to actually remain popular with the people who knew him best. The fucking Politburo and the Central Committee. I mean, that seems to suggest that maybe the ability to sort of manipulate people into liking you cedes when you actually get a chance to actually do shit.
Definitely.
But we're not going to talk about that.
Definitely a bro, you know what I mean? Definitely, but, this is a guy who knew how to get along with people. He could tell jokes. He could tell stories. And he just was very, very charming. And that's how Stalin was able to do what he did, right? That's how he was able.
When we're not going to talk about what he did. Yeah, very conveniently, there's no time left to talk about what he did.
And put all of your thoughts about what happened when he was leading Russia aside.
It's because, that's the idea. We get all these likable, relatable anecdotes, and it immediately makes you feel a little bit better about Stalin, kind of. Because it's things he did that you can kind of you can kind of think were actually kind of cool. I mean, smuggling books into a seminary school? Yeah, fuck yeah. Do it. But, so he manages, without ever having to take a position on the things in Stalin's life that anyone gives a fuck about, to sort of predispose the listener towards a favorable view of him, or a more favorable view of him. That's very, actually, that is more clever than I will admit to having previously given Caleb Maupin credit for.
Was the very nervous person, the very nervous guy, and all of that. Well, now I'm telling you who Stalin was, right? And again, if you want to understand Stalin,
well, you're telling us who Stalin was until age 25 or so.
And the role he played in history, you have to understand the personality there. Now, one of the best stories I ever heard about Stalin, and again, if you go to Barnes & Noble, you'll find a million biographies. They're all full of unverified stories of him doing monstrous atrocities. But one of the best stories I ever heard.
And then what about the verified stories of him doing monstrous atrocities, though? There are a few of them.
Heard about Stalin, which people say checks out, most likely probably did happen, right? It's not just a rumor, it's not just something, is that supposedly one day when Stalin was leader of the Soviet Union, he was walking with his daughter, right? And his daughter saw a propaganda poster with him on it. And his daughter said, "Oh my God, Daddy, are you Stalin?" And Stalin said to his daughter, supposedly, right? This probably happened. This is not, it doesn't fit the horror story. This is, you know.
Okay, so this probably happened, despite being probably just as poorly attested as quite a few other anecdotes that one could tell. But it makes him sound good.
Something that most likely happened. Stalin said to his daughter, he said, no, that's Stalin. That's Stalin. I'm your father. Meaning that Stalin himself knew that the propaganda, you know, and that's true. I mean, as much as...
Knew that the propaganda was...
As much as...
Oh, I see. Yeah, he's saying that he knew that he didn't buy his own... he didn't get high on his own supply.
As much as I'm critical of the books that we all get spoon-fed about Stalin, where he comes across as this atrocious monster...
Why did you finish your thought?
Monster. You know, the Soviet biographies of Stalin are junk. I mean, they're just, you know, they're just so, you know, sappy propaganda. You know, that, yeah, you know, the cult of personality around.
What about the post-20th Congress Soviet biographies? I'm not saying I actually haven't read them, but I would assume that after they kicked him out of the mausoleum, that, and there was this whole, you know, the secret speech and all this reappraisal of the years of Stalinist revisionism, that maybe there were some somewhat more critical biographies, because certainly the idea that Stalin was not an exemplary, you know, Soviet ruler was widespread and, you know, actually officially sanctioned after that. So, I mean, if he's talking about biographies of Stalin from when Stalin was running the place, yeah, those are going to be complete bullshit. But I'm pretty sure there would probably be some decent work on him from after
Stalin. The cult of personality around him wasn't very honest, right? That he was...
Yeah, that's... Yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't very honest. It was... I mean, they literally airbrushed Trotsky out of photos.
Presented as this, you know, superhuman, infallible, godlike father figure for the nation or something. It wasn't really who he was. And he knew that.
Really?
And that story, that anecdote where he says to his daughter, he says, "Oh, no, that's Stalin. I'm your father."
Yeah, i.e., that's a whole bunch of bullshit that we just feed people.
It's sweet, right? I mean, and it shows...
You know, it's sweet. You see, it tells me a lot about Caleb Maupin. Nothing too surprising that he thinks that's sweet, because that's Stalin admitting that he doesn't believe a word of the bullshit that was put out in order to keep him in power.
That on some level, you know, again, just like the cult of personality around Lenin, the image you get of Lenin is very different than who Lenin really was. The image that we get of Stalin, the Soviet government made of Stalin, was very different than who he really was. And
yeah, because Stalin had absolutely nothing to do with his personal image, because he was, like, notoriously hands-off when it came to the middle management and propaganda and stuff. I mean, he never would have thought of sticking his oar in there.
Image that we're now presented with Stalin, where, you know, and we're presented with the image of Stalin as being Satan, you know, Satan incarnate. That's not very accurate either.
Well, okay, so that was a load of shit. Okay. No, wait. No, we don't need to see this.
Honestly, I just want to let you know I love you.
Oh, come on. There. I think we'll play a little bit more of Rapid for the last 13 minutes. Maybe not get my ass kicked this time.
우리 세상 끝까지 이 깃발 따라 한길 가리라.
Okay, looks like we got the Scandy coming up. Open up that F file. Okay. 그래서
이내 마음 그 누가 못 믿어도 그대만은 날
Okay, got a next word action going on here.
둘도 없는 나의 어머니 영원한 삶의 별이여 오직 하나 그대만이 나를
Okay.
안아주네. 말 못하는 가슴 속 아픔도 그대 먼저 헤아려 줬네. 둘도 없는 나의 어머니 은혜로운 당의 품이여 세상에 그대
Okay. See about maybe opening up a little discovery here. Or perhaps not. Well, no, I can do it differently. I can. Ooh, I can. That's perfect. Ooh.
바람처럼
No.
바람처럼 이 몸은
Oh shit. That was him.
흩어져도 천번 다시 만번 다시 돌아와 길이라 둘도 없는 나의 어머니 위대한 당의 품이라
There we go.
이몸 바쳐 그대
Actually, that worked out reasonably well. 2 rooks for a queen.
이몸 바쳐 그대 품에
Ah, shit, that wasn't good though. We got an open file here. See what we can do in this last 5 minutes. And just so you know, we're gonna have, just to make up for the whole Corneal bullshit, there's going to be another stream tomorrow night to make up for the one that we missed on Friday because my eye was all fucked up.
내 젊은 시절 추억도 많은 사진첩을 펼칠 때면 전화의 그날 이전우들이 나를 보고 물어보네 그때처럼 우리가
Okay, I think this is going to be one where I might win.
그때처럼 우리가 살고 있는가 낙동강을 걸으며 돈피를 뿌리던
There we go. That's how you end a stream properly. Without getting my ass kicked. Okay, that was nice. That was good, actually. Very happy with that. Blundered the queen, managed to get it back. Okay, and with that, that is going to be the end of the stream for tonight. But tomorrow night, unusually, there will be another stream, same time as usual. And then after that, we're back to Friday and Saturday, assuming that my eyes don't get fucked up again. Have a good night. Hope to see you tomorrow.